Hello everybody, my name is Professor Rich, and today we are talking about comparatives in English. We're going to have a look at comparative adjectives and how those can best be used. So thank you very much for joining me today. What do you know about making comparatives in English? We're going to look at how you make comparatives in a natural way. Give me just a moment, let's pull this up. Okay, so what actually is a comparative? So when we say a comparative, what we're talking about in English is a set of adjectives called comparative adjectives. So comparatives are ways of showing a difference between things using adjectives. As we can see here, Emma, and then we can see here Bob. And we can say some things about Bob and Emma. We can say that she is colder than him. And we can say she is not as hot as him. And you can see these words here in bold. These are actually adjectives. This is an adjective hot, and this is an adjective colder. It's the comparative form of the adjective. The comparative form of the adjective. And that's really what we're focusing on today. So when we want to show a difference between things, one way we can do that is by using these sentences with comparative adjectives. It's worth noting that in context, we do often use a short form. So we don't need to say the full sentence of she is colder than him or Emma is colder than Bob. You can just say she's colder. Who's hotter? She is not as hot. Because we have the context, so we know what we're comparing here. And often when people are speaking, then they will say things like this: she's colder, she's not as hot. We don't need to say the full form. So just be careful with that, because it is one of the things that happens with language learners, that they learn these in the full form and do lots of grammar practice using the full form, and then underuse these shorter forms, which can be quite common, especially in conversation. Sure. Okay, Sleepwalker. I will do. We'll have to have a vote at the end as to whether we want background music or not. So let's do a little bit of practice just to get us into the mood of making comparatives. It's very simple, very simple. Just a little bit of a comprehension check, and also just focusing our context on the idea of comparatives. So take a look there at the questions in each case, and I just want you to tell me the answer to those questions in each case. That's all we're doing. So number one, who is happier? Is it Emma or Tom? And number two, which is bigger, a mouse or an elephant? And number three, which is more expensive, a bike or a car? So it's that simple. And we just need a very simple answer to all these things. We can answer in full sentences if you want, like Sleepwalker has said, Tom is happier. That's fine. But it is perfectly okay just to say Tom if you want. An elephant is bigger than a mouse. Very good. What about number three? What is more expensive? Is it a bike or a car? Car is more expensive. Fantastic. So that just tunes us into the subject. And we can look at the rules for forming comparatives. Probably most of you know these. And these are based on the examples we just looked at. So you can look at those questions. Who is happier? Which is bigger? And which is more expensive? And in those examples, we can see all of these types of comparatives. We have one syllable, which is big and that goes to bigger. If you're interested, by the way, in the spelling rules here, it's to do with the form of consonant, verb, consonant. So if you end a word in a verb in vowel consonant, not verb, in vowel consonant, then you add a suffix to that, then normally we double the final consonant. That's just a spelling rule. And to be perfectly honest, spelling rules are one of the least important things to learn about English, especially these days. So if it's one syllable, big, then we add ER, and that's the comparative form bigger. You can see it in the second question, which is bigger. If it's two syllables or more, then we use the word more plus the adjective, just the normal form of the adjective. So expensive, expensive is 3 syllables. And so with that, we say more expensive, more expensive. So not expensiver, but more expensive. And then finally, we have this special rule. You've probably heard of this. If the word ends in Y, then we add IER to form the comparative. So happy becomes happier. And they are the basic ways of forming comparative adjectives or comparative forms from the original adjective. However, some one-syllable adjectives have no form. So, big and bigger, that's good. But there is no funner. We don't say this is funner than that. We say it's more fun. There isn't a writer. He's righter than her. No, we don't say that. We say it's more right. And juster, if someone's just, which means that they are fair, then we say that they are more just. We don't say that they are juster. He's juster than they are. No, he's more just. Now, strangely enough, we do have fairer, which means essentially the same thing. So he is fairer than her. He is a fairer teacher. But we don't say he's juster. We say he's more just. So worthwhile noting there are plenty of these one-syllable adjectives that have no ER form, and there is absolutely no rule whatsoever to learn that. It is just that you need to know it. So you just need to become familiar with some of the one-syllable adjectives which don't have an ER form. So look out for that. Languages don't make sense. Languages are mainly idiosyncratic, and the rules are simply descriptive grammar rules, which we use to try to make sense of the language. But language as a whole languages as a whole, in fact, are idiosyncratic, which means they don't make sense. So also, sometimes natives use the more plus adjective form anyway, although traditional grammar will say this is wrong. When speaking, natives will do it, and they'll say stuff like, who's more happy? Now, according to our grammar rules, this is incorrect. We should be using happier, but just to let you know, people do say stuff like this. So there you go. That's life. So let's have a bit of practice just with those simple forms. I want you to write sentences to compare these things. We have Spain versus Japan. So write your sentences in the chat if you're watching this video later. Then you can pause the video, take your notepad and a pen, and write down some practice sentences using a notepad and a pen. And we want to be using comparative forms, which means we're using adjectives to compare these two things, to compare Spain and Japan. Of course, as always, make sure that you do smash that like button and hit subscribe. So, sentences comparing Spain and Japan, for example. Spain is hotter than Japan. Spain is drier than Japan. Any ideas, everyone? Which one is more populated? Which one do you think is smaller geographically? Which one is more polite? Spain is more expensive than Japan. I'm pretty sure that's not true. Have you been to Japan, Rennie? Japan is greater than Spain. That's a bit subjective, Sylvia. That's certainly an opinion someone might disagree with. Japanese people are more polite. So we can say that. We can say Japanese people are more polite. Japanese people are more polite. Polite is 2 syllables, which means we use more polite. According to Tetsuro, Spain is colder than Japan. I'm not so sure about that, Tetsuro. Spain is pretty hot, especially in Andalusia. 44 degrees Celsius in the summer. Very hot. It's like a desert in the summer. But I do know that people think Japan is cold, but actually Japan is like super hot in the summer as well. I think because of the idea of Fuji with the snow, people think, oh yeah, Japan is quite cold. No, it's not. It's super hot in the summer. All right, great. Let's try another one. So I'd like you to write sentences comparing crocodiles and birds as I look a little bit at the last few sentences from the last activity. Sleepwalker says Japan is more beautiful than Spain. Just an example. Yeah, that's certainly an opinion. Spain is very beautiful. I really do like Japanese buildings, though, I have to say. Crocodiles are bigger than birds. That's a good one. We have a bigger form there. 1 syllable plus ER. Big goes to bigger. Crocodiles are more wild than birds. Now, this is interesting with more wild because this is a good example where wilder and more wild both sound good. They both sound okay. So this is an example, as I said before, that sometimes natives will use wilder or more wild, and actually they both sound okay in that case. So crocodiles are more wild than birds, or crocodiles are wilder than birds. Crocodiles are more fierce than birds. Again, fiercer is also possible. Crocodiles are more fierce than birds. Crocodiles are fiercer than birds. I think in that case, I actually prefer more fierce. Birds are friendlier than crocodiles. Well done, Rani. That's pretty good. Crocodiles are crueler than birds. I would go for crueler here rather than more cruel. Crocodiles are crueler. Great. Let's move on. One more. So, practicing with skiing and running. Skiing and running. How can we compare skiing and running? Well, skiing is more difficult than running. Pretty good. Running is more useful than skiing. Skiing is more fun. You missed your more. Skiing is more fun than running. I have to admit. I like the I have to admit. That sounds good. Running is healthier than skiing. I don't know about that. But maybe. People have all sorts of opinions about this. I remember in the 2000s, a lot of people were talking about how running can mess up your knees. And it was all this stuff about you have to have the right shoes and run on the right surface and things like that. That doesn't quite work, Jim. So what do we want to say? Like, running is more energetic than skiing, I think could be good. We could say that running burns more calories than skiing, and then we're using an adverb form to compare. So running burns more calories than skiing. Where more calories becomes an adverb, changing the verb, making it a comparison that focuses on the verb. Skiing is more dangerous than running. Skiing is more dangerous than running. And Julia popping in with crocodiles are more ferocious than birds. Well, that's great. That's a good one about the crocodiles and birds one. Fantastic. Well done. That's enough practice for the moment. Let's learn some more stuff. So it's worth noting with comparatives, we almost always use some form of intensifier or downtoner. And a downtoner is just the opposite of an intensifier. So an intensifier makes something greater, and a downtoner makes it less. An example of an intensifier is far or much. And an example of a downtoner would be a little bit, or slightly. So these are downtoners and intensifiers. You can just call them all intensifiers, and I often do, to be honest. So we almost always use these when we're making comparisons. It's very rare that we'll make a comparison without using one of these. Very rare. So most of the time when making comparisons, we use these intensifiers and downtoners. So rather than saying the weather here is colder than Spain, we say the weather here is significantly colder than Spain, or she's a little bit more studious than him, or the food at this restaurant is far superior to the other one. So notice significantly, a little bit, and far. Most of the time, we're using these intensifiers and downtoners. And when we use the downtoner, that can also be a form of hedging, where in reality, we mean, yeah, she is more studious than him, but we use the downtoner to be more polite. That's called hedging. So when we reduce the strength of our opinion for politeness, that's called hedging. And that could be an example of that, where we're saying, well, who's more studious? Well, she's a little bit more studious than him, to be honest. But, really it means she is more studious than him. Okay, so intensifiers and downtoners. Do you know any more of these words? What other intensifiers and downtoners do you know? You don't need to say whether it's an intensifier or downtoner, but just type those in the chat. If you're watching at home, take a moment, take your notepad, write them down. What intensifiers and downtoners do you know? What are the common ones that we use in English? Better is not one. Better is a comparative adjective. It's in irregular form. So the adjective is good and the comparative adjective is better. But that's not an intensifier. Yes, sleepwalker. Much is one. Utterly is not one. You're thinking of something else, Sylvia. So when you say utterly and totally, you are thinking of extreme adverbs that we use to emphasize extreme adjectives, like boiling or freezing, where we say it's absolutely boiling, absolutely freezing. but we're not talking about that. Nope, still is not one. Ever is not one. So let me give you you're finding this difficult. Let me give you an example sentence, right? So we want to say, for example, crocodiles are more dangerous than birds. Okay, and we want to put a word here. So we could say far more dangerous. We could say much more dangerous. We can say a little more dangerous. What else? Yeah, that's it. Good job, Shimi. Way is one of them. Slightly, yes. Slightly is one. Good job. Anything else? There's not actually that many that we use a lot. Approximately is good. Fairly is good as well. Yeah. Fairly is a really interesting one. Because fairly, whether it actually means a lot or a little, can depend on the context. So significantly is a good one. And in the downtoners, a little is quite similar to also a bit and a little bit. We can use all of those. So crocodiles are a little bit more dangerous than birds. Crocodiles are a bit more dangerous than birds. Crocodiles are a little more dangerous than birds. Marginally. Another good one. You want to sound fancy? So when we're saying things like obviously, these are adverbs of, what do we call it? Is it manner or comment? But these are adverbs, but they're not intensifiers and downtoners. So when we say obviously, it's not that you're necessarily saying how big the difference is. Rather, you're saying something about the opinion that it is obvious. So crocodiles are more dangerous than birds, and this fact is obvious. So this kind of adverb is different. And a few other people have said some other things in there as well, like literally and evidently. These are not intensifiers and downtoners. They're different kinds of adverb, which affect the way that we're presenting the opinion, but they don't affect the distance in difference. And what I want to do with intensifiers and downtoners is say, here there's a big difference between these things. Here there's a little difference between these things. Somewhat, that's a good one. Nice. Yeah. Okay, great. So we've got quite a nice collection here. Far, much, way, significantly, somewhat, and a little bit, a bit, slightly, and marginally. Marginally is the one that people forget. It's a good one, though. Sounds good. All right. Let's have some practice. So this time, I want you to use those intensifiers and downtoners. I'd like you to write sentences to compare these using those intensifiers or downtoners. So we have burgers and salad. So what could you say to compare burgers and salads? What would you say about that? Remember that you have to use intensifiers and downtoners in your sentences. So type those in the chat and we'll take a look, see what you have. Might help you that while you're typing those opinions in the chat that you say them out loud as well. Try and say them out loud in a natural way if you can to help you practice. I'd say that burgers are significantly easier to cook than salads. Maybe that's not true, actually. No, definitely is not an intensifier in this case. We're looking to make the gap between the comparisons higher, Sylvia. Salad is significantly healthier than the burger. So salads are significantly healthier than burgers. That's a good one. Salads are significantly healthier than burgers. Salads are significantly healthier than burgers. Which one is cheaper? Which one's more popular? Which one's tastier? Salads are way better than burgers, says Sleepwalker. Salads are way better. That's great. Way better. Young people like to say that, or they used to like to say that. They're not young anymore. When I say young people now, I mean like people who are like 35. The generation under me love to say way better. Ah, Tetsuro, you're missing an intensifier. You said a hamburger is more delicious than a salad, but we need to have an intensifier just before the word more. So we say hamburgers are much more delicious than salads. Salads are far cheaper than burgers. Yes, I do believe that's true, Yuri. Burgers are slightly cheaper than salads. Salads are somewhat more ordered. When we say more ordered, that sounds like you're saying organized. Maybe popular is the word there. Salads are somewhat more popular than hamburgers. Yes, I think I'd go with Ranit here, that burgers are slightly more popular than salads. Hamburgers are much fattier, because the adjective here is fatty. So hamburgers are much fattier than salads. Fattier. Great. Okay, let's try a different topic. Boat versus plane. I think it would be better to have these in plural form, by the way. So we're actually considering and comparing boats versus planes, remembering to use intensifiers and downtoners. So what would you like to say about boats versus planes, or traveling by boat versus traveling by plane? Making comparisons, boats versus planes. Type your answers in the chat, full sentence, and using intensifiers and downtoners. Planes are far faster than boats. Yes, Tetsura, that's correct. Well done. And that's also correct, Sleepwalker. Well done. Of course, when we say a word like preferable, it's very open to interpretation what that means. We normally need some sort of context, because in what way is it preferable? But the English is correct there. Planes are a little more expensive than boats. It takes a much, let's get an intensifier in there, Shimi. It takes a much longer time. It takes a much longer time to travel by boat than by plane. Planes are much faster than boats. Traveling by plane is way more expensive than traveling by boats. Oh, that's great. He's got dramatically. Did you Google that? That's fantastic, EGM. If you didn't, dramatically is a good intensifier. A boat ride is dramatically more relaxing than a plane journey. Do you think so? Some people find plane journeys relaxing as well. Planes are far bigger than boats. Great. Okay, well done. Next. Cash versus credit cards. Cash versus credit cards. So what can we say about cash versus credit cards? We might think, which of these is more convenient? Which one's more old-fashioned? Using cash is far easier. So, Yuri, we're going to take out the word more. Using cash is far easier than using cards. Credit cards are far more suitable than cash. Suitable doesn't quite work here as an adjective, because with suitable, we really need there to be a specific situation to say why it's made suitable. I think what you're trying to get at is convenient. If it was in context, it might make a bit more sense. Like if we say something like, during the pandemic, credit cards were far more appropriate than cash. Some people claim. Credit cards are way more useful for online shopping. I like it. That's a great sentence. Great, because also we have the reduction. It's a half the form. We don't need to say the full form that we're comparing it to cash. So we don't need to say than cash. Not necessary. Just say credit cards are way more useful for online shopping. Great. Credit cards are significantly more popular than cash these days. Paying by cash is still more common than paying by credit card, at least in my country. Great. Paying with credit card is far safer than cash. Is it? Quite an unusual situation in the UK that some places don't accept cash now, so you can only pay by card. And a lot of people don't like that, actually. They don't like the idea that cash is disappearing. Okay, let's move on. We've got oil paintings and digital art. So oil paintings versus digital art. What would you like to say about that? What can we say to compare oil paintings and digital arts? Does that put you off the UK? Some places only accept credit card. Why does that put you off? Credit card's very convenient. I'm just saying that some people don't like the fact that there are businesses that only accept credit card. They don't accept cash. Not quite sure what you mean by increasable, Sleepwalker. Oil paintings are way more increasable. What do you mean by increasable? Digital art is way more interesting than oil paintings, says Yuri. That's quite a statement. Digital art takes less time to make, while that's not the case with oil paintings. Digital art is considerably easier to reproduce and share. Correct. Considerably easier. Nice. Another intensifier from eGem. Do you have a list there, eGem? That's great. Digital art is considerably easier to reproduce and share. Correct. Oil paintings are way more artistic than digital art. That is an opinion. Okay. Cats and dogs. A classic. Cats versus dogs. Which one? Which one is the best? So which of these do you think are friendlier? Which require higher maintenance? Which are more loyal? Which are more playful? Which are more expensive? Cash payments are more complex than paying with credit cards. Well done, Julia. Ah, look at this. It's Mr. LF. The big LF. Domenico. Hey, Rich. How have you been? It's been a while since I last heard from you. It's breakfast time here, and I'm enjoying my day off. I'll be back in the field for a dive tomorrow, as I'm a dive master. That's fantastic, Domenico. I am in awe of your life. Domenico is a marine biology specialist. Cats are slightly fluffier than dogs. Yeah. Do you want to see my jumper? I don't know if you can see, but it's covered in hairs. Yeah, you can see that. Welcome to cats. Oh, that's a great one. Yuri, you've said some good stuff. Cats are far more independent than dogs. Dogs can be way more loyal than cats. I like how you said that with can be. Can be. Dogs can be way more loyal than cats. Cats are much cuter than dogs. Isn't it funny? Isn't it funny that the internet effect with cats has been much more significant than with dogs? So cats have done very well from the internet, much more so than dogs. Like the cats kind of rule the internet, cat pictures and stuff. Even though, you know, in terms of popularity, I think it's about 50-50. Some people like cats, some people like dogs. But on the internet, it's all cats. There's some dog stuff, but cats are the kings of the internet. Dogs are better companions than cats. That might be true, and I'm a cat owner. Cats are way more beautiful than dogs. Well, that's just an opinion, though. Some people love dogs. Cats are way. Okay, Shimi, take out the more. Cats are way lazier. Cats are way lazier than dogs, while dogs are way more playful than cats. Nice. Cats are way more popular in memes than dogs. Yes. Cats are a meme on the internet. So, well done, everyone. That's a nice bit of practice with comparatives. Worthwhile noting there are other ways to make comparisons, I should say. Other forms of comparisons in English. Obviously, comparatives are just one way. Comparative means comparative adjective. So we can use this special form of the adjective called a comparative adjective, use that to make a comparison. However, there are other ways of making comparisons in English. For example, we've got this as adjective as form. Reading isn't as fun as video games. So as fun as, that's a common way to make a comparison. And another way is to use words like whilst, whereas, and but. Reading is fun, whilst working isn't. Reading is fun, whereas working isn't. Reading is fun, but working isn't. So, other ways of making comparisons in English. Comparatives are not your only option. They're just one of the options you can use. None of this stuff is relevant. This is all from last class, which was about articles, if you didn't get it. And that does bring us to question time. So if you have any questions about today's topic or about English in general, then you can type those questions now into the chats. And the notes are available to download at this address, which I will post into the chats and in a moment down below the video. So any questions that you guys have about English, life in general, or whatever, post those questions. I'll do my best to answer them. Whether it's about learning, about English, or about life in general, I'll do my best. And that's where you can download the notes for today. Domenico says, my two master instructors are native English speakers who are guiding me in the instructor development course. My fellow dive master, who also works in marine conservation, is from Manchester. Wonderful. Yeah, I bet there's some great diving around where you live, Domenico. Just going to make my picture a little bit bigger. Gets covered by the... That's better, isn't it? Come up here. Sylvia says, why was my sentence wrong? Which sentence? Not sure what you're talking about, Sylvia. This one. Cats sleep much more than pooches. It's not wrong. It's good. What you're looking for there, Julia, is dogs are much more loyal than cats. I'll say that again. Dogs are much more loyal than cats. Oh, Sylvia, I can't remember that. You need to type it. It's gone from my feed now. Sleepwalker says some adjectives can form both comparative and superlative form using ust or more, most, cleverer, more clever, superlative, cleverest, most clever. Do you agree? Yeah, we talked about that, right? That there are some rules, and we spoke about the rules at the start of the class. However, you have to be aware that there are exceptions to the rules, and in some cases, both are possible. So when it comes to clever, she's cleverer than him. She's more clever. Cleverer sounds better. He's the most clever. He's the cleverest. The cleverest sounds better. But you are correct to say that both are possible. And you just need to listen out for what people use. Most of the time, we follow the rules, but just sometimes we don't follow the rules. Well, this is an interesting question, Sleepwalker. So, to some extent, the answer to this question, Sleepwalker's question is, are both grammatically correct? The answer to that question depends on how much you are a traditional grammarian and how much you're a descriptive grammarian. So you could rely on an authoritative source, such as the Oxford English Dictionary or something like that, and you'll be able to find out what that says. However, at the end of the day, all that institution is doing is making a judgment based on how people use the language. So I would say, rather than doing that, I would encourage you to use your own judgment in how often you see the forms. And I would say, when it comes to exams and writing, stick to the traditional form, right? However, if when you're speaking, the other form comes out, don't worry about it because people use it. So if you happen to say more clever when you're speaking, that's okay. When it comes to an exam, stick to the traditional cleverer, cleverest. This is the same as, for example, with the second conditional, how you can say, if I were you, that's the correct form. If I were you, I'd do this. If I were you, I'd tell him. If I were you, I'd apologize. However, when people are speaking today, they will often use this form that Sylvia hates, which is, if I was in your position, if I was you sounds awful, but if I was in your position, I wouldn't do that. Now, with traditional grammar, that's incorrect. And I would discourage saying that on an exam. With an exam, stick to the if I were in your position, I'd do it. So that rule basically applies to everything. So whenever we're questioning about grammar and correctness, and we say, is this grammatically correct? Then there will be an answer that comes from the institution and from tradition. And then there will also be an answer based on use. And which way you go with that depends on what is your objective. So if you're taking an exam, it's just better to go for the tradition, because many of the examiners and many teachers, they like that traditional grammar idea. And so they will, more often than not, they'll reward that over using a popular use form, which is considered incorrect by some people, for example. But when it comes to just improving your communication, forget that. Right? When it comes to communication, you just want to express yourself. Right? That's a good example, Sleepwalker. Yeah, and in this case, the grammar rule would tell us we should use were, W-E-R-E. I wish this holiday were longer. But you will definitely hear people use was in that sentence, for example. Definitely. It's becoming more common as well. Yeah, good time to smash that like button. Any other questions, folks? Common, handsome, likely, pleasant, polite, simple, stupid, lovely, tender. Not quite sure where we're going with that. Of course, EJM, it's good to have you. And it seems that your practice was pretty good as well. You had some really good examples that you came up with while we were doing the practice on the comparatives. I really liked it. So well done for that. Some great examples there that you came up with. How's everyone doing this weekend? What plans do you have? Does anyone have any interesting plans? The weather in the UK has got pretty good now. We've got the sun coming out. It's very nice. It's always good to have the sun come out. It helps a little bit, doesn't it, when the sun comes out? Everyone gets a little bit happier with the sun coming out. Sleepwalker says, Rich, talking about regrets in the past, I wish you could have stayed longer. Could have plus past participle is the correct structure. It's one of them. So I wish is quite weird. There's some quite special rules for using it. So certainly could have is a possibility, but also past participle is another one. Past participle is actually probably the sort of standard one, right? So I wish you had stayed longer. Okay. Which in this case, I'm just talking about the fact that you stayed longer in the past. And I just wish that that fact were true. So I wish you had stayed longer. I'll go back to that in a moment, Sylvia. I don't see that sentence. So I don't know what happened because you typed it in the chat, but I think you deleted a load of messages and confused my little chat thing. So I can't highlight it, but I'll take a look in a moment. Just finish this question. So yeah, so one option is I wish you had stayed longer with the past participle. However, we have this I wish plus would form, which is often used for criticizing behavior. So, like in the present, we say, I wish you'd help me more, right? In the past, I wish you would have helped me. And this is closer to what you're saying, because you're saying could, but could is like would be able to. So yours is like, I wish you would have been able to help me, or I wish you would have been able to stay longer, which is fine and sounds perfectly okay. But just bear in mind, it's slightly different than the usual form, which is I wish plus past participle. And also that normally when we use I wish plus would, then we're criticizing behavior. Not always. Like I wish it would stop raining. Okay, it's fine as well. But it contains that emotional agitation. That like it's like saying, I'm irritated that this didn't happen. I'm irritated that you didn't help me. I'm irritated that it didn't stop raining. I wish it would have stopped raining. Right? And when you say could, that's like would be able to. So it's like you're irritated that it wasn't possible. Oh, I wish you could have stayed longer, right? I wish you could have stayed longer. I'm irritated that it wasn't possible for you to stay longer. Whereas the more neutral form is I wish plus past participle for talking about the past. Okay. So to answer Sylvia's question here, which is about this, salads are somewhat more. It's the word ordered. She said salads are somewhat rather ordered than hamburgers. No. Salads are somewhat. I don't even know what's the adjective that you're trying to use, because ordered. Do you mean popular? Are somewhat more popular than hamburgers. That's the correct one. Or salads are rather more popular. than hamburgers. Also possible. But, with ordered, you're missing the word more, for one. You need to say more. But then ordered also doesn't sound great in the way you're using it, because it sounds like you're talking about being organized rather than ordering from a restaurant. So that's why. And my face in the way. There you go. I wish you'd been reading this letter. Past perfect continuous for I wish. It's possible, but very unusual. The past perfect continuous in general is very unusual. So you need a good reason to use it. Like, I wish you'd been coming to church as long as me. That's possible. I wish you'd been coming to church as long as I had. That's possible. To talk about a continuous event up to a point in the past that didn't happen, but that you wish were true. So it's possible. In your one, I wish you'd been reading this letter, doesn't quite make sense because using that continuous form with read the letter indicates that reading the letter is like an incomplete, ongoing thing in the past. And that's a little bit unusual for a letter, It's like, why would you use that form, right? But like, I wish you'd been coming to church. That's a bit better because then you've got the long, repetitive, ongoing thing in the past. Yep, some stuff with Domenico. I think I wish I would have spent. I wish I would have. You think that's wrong? I wish I would have spent. What's the problem with it? I wish I would have spent what? I wish I would have spent more time. I wish I would have. I wish I would have. I wish I would. It's a little bit strange to say I wish I would and then speak about your own behavior, because it's like expressing an irritation of your own behavior. It's almost a little bit schizophrenic, right? So with would, we don't normally use that with I. Like, I wish I would. So instead, I'd say, I wish I had spent, rather than I wish I would have, right? You could say, I wish I would have had more money. That's okay, because like, I'm irritated by the fact that I didn't have more money. But if you talk about your own behavior, like, I wish I would have studied more, that's possible, actually. I wish I would have studied more, because I'm irritated by the fact that I didn't study more. It's my fault, right? You can see where I'm getting with this. But I wish I would have spent. I'm not so sure about that. I think I wish I'd spent makes more sense to me. I'm not saying it's impossible. Just be aware of what it means when you say, I wish I would. That with would, we're expressing that irritation about the behavior. What about past continuous when we are talking about regrets in the present? I wish you were looking for my keys. Doesn't sound good. I wish you were looking for my keys. I wish you helped me. I wish you were helping me. I wish you were looking for my keys. I wish you were helping me right now. That's all right. I wish you were here helping me. You're on the phone to someone. I wish you were helping me. I wish you were coming to the party. Yeah. You can use past continuous for I wish in the present. I just don't particularly like the example of I wish you were looking for my keys. I think with that one, I'd be more likely to say, I wish you, I wish you would come and help me look for my keys. That's how I'd say it. I wish you'd help me. I wish you'd come and help me now look for my keys. That seems better to me. I wish you had the background music playing. Okay, let's have a vote. Okay, here comes the vote. You get ready. There's going to be a poll in chat. Do you prefer music? I'm sticking to my guns. It's quite common when it comes to descriptive grammar as opposed to prescriptive or textbook grammar. Yes, sure. Okay. I don't deny it. I wish I would have spent more time studying. I wish I would have spent more time in the library when I was younger. Yeah, it sounds okay like that, actually. I wish I would have spent more time in the library. You sure? During study time, many prefer silence. Yeah, but is this study time? I wouldn't call this study time. A class is not really study is like when you're alone studying, right? You can do studying in class, but with an online stream, we don't normally do that. We don't do study. It's more practice. There's certainly some input, some presentation, which comes from me. So I present some things, you learn it, you make notes, whatever. But that's not what I would call study. Sleepwalker said, I read that we usually use an infinitive without to. I wish you wouldn't be so lazy. Not, you wouldn't have been. Both of those are infinitives without to, though. Wouldn't have been is also an infinitive. Have been. That's the perfect infinitive. So it's fine. And it just depends on whether you're talking about a general characteristic, I wish you wouldn't be so lazy, versus when you were younger, I wish you wouldn't have been so lazy. Both of those are infinitives without to. Just one of them is the perfect infinitive. Domenico says, I'm getting used to many English accents, which help my listening skills evolve, become quite strong. My English comprehension has also improved significantly, thanks to frequent exposure. I'm going to add the word exposure because you ran out of characters. No es para tanto, la verdad. Pues yo no. A mí no. Parallel also possible, as in, I wish I'd have known you're in town. I wish I'd have known. Yeah. I wish I would have known. I wish I would have known you were in town. Correct. Yeah. Now, that one, Vitelli, is definitely an example of how in use, people will say it like that, but the grammar books will tell you the correct form is, I wish I had known. Not I would have. I wish I would have known. But people definitely say that. They definitely say what you just wrote, for sure. Ah, there's the rest of Domenico's sentence there. So, the music's obviously super controversial. We've got 50-50. 50-50 yes, no, with 10 votes. 10 votes? Where is everyone? No one bothered voting. So, I don't know what to say about that. If it's 50-50, probably that means I'm not going to use music, because if it irritates 50% of the audience, then I don't think it's worth it. So, maybe I won't do it. I think I won't do it. Or if we have music, we'll just have it in this last bit. So maybe just the music when it comes to the Q&A. I'm taking inspiration from popular streamers on YouTube, which might not always be a good idea, but I've noticed that popular streamers on YouTube often have like some sort of background music going on. But then, we are an educational channel. So we are about education. Maybe it's not quite the same thing. By the way, I do play music in class. Very often I play classical music in the background in my class. Not loud, very quiet, just quiet classical music. So you can just hear a bit of violin, a bit of piano in the background in the class. And the response to that is almost unanimously positive. So lots of students really appreciate that, the background music. And actually they complain if I forget to do it. We've got Ahmed. Hello there. Yeah, sounds good. I mean, like I said, people definitely say it. It sounds perfectly good to me. I think it's more important to consider whether something's going to annoy someone, because annoying people is a lot worse than maybe making some people happy. So anything that's going to irritate someone, I think even if it was 60-40, I'd think twice about it. But a 50-50, no music. That's it. But in the classroom, it works. And I've had votes, by the way, in the classroom, and it's the vast majority vote for the music. So certain kind of music, though, no pop music, no songs with lyrics, nothing like that. It's just classical music, low volume. People really like it. Just a little bit of piano in the background. Except for this one time I had someone who was a music teacher, and she got distracted by the music because she liked it so much. She kind of tuned in and started listening to, oh, it's Beethoven's 76th concerto or whatever. Yeah, definitely won't be playing Queen in the classroom anytime soon. Yeah, like Beethoven, classical music. Chopin, Beethoven, Louise Ferenc. Do quite like a bit of Louise Ferenc, have to say. We didn't have classical music today. Do you know the problem, the reason why I don't play classical music on the streams, Sleepwalker, is the performances are copyrighted on YouTube. So if I play the classical music, although the music is not copyright, but the performance is copyrighted, which means the video gets struck for copyright. So that's kind of a problem. Otherwise, I would do it, definitely. I am just sitting here to see if anyone else has any other questions. Maybe I need a little bit more content. Nobody beats the UK in music. I think that definitely was true. something interesting about the UK, isn't it? We just had some really great music in the 60s, 70s, 80s. Like just worldwide amazing music. I don't think anyone really knows why. Still true. Who are we talking about though? What do you who what, Adele? What are we talking about if it's still true? What's James? I don't even know the names of the people who do music now in the UK. Calvin Harris. Coldplay, they're a 90s band, surely, or early 2000s. Adele's okay. She's not. It's not like Queen, is it? You know, she's all right. But she's nothing. She's not as particularly better than other performers worldwide, right? Domenico says, one of my two master's instructors is from the state of Georgia and he tends to speak English so quickly that even native speakers sometimes struggle to understand him. Well, the Georgian accent is super weird. I've heard it. It's super weird. I love it, though. It's so cool. It's a really cool American accent. But it is strange. Adele doesn't sing, she bellows. Is that a compliment or a criticism? I'm not sure bellow is the right. Bellow makes it sound not so good. I wish current popular music made more love songs than breakup songs. I think they make it both. Yeah, but so, you know, everyone, I mean, the Americans have got loads, you know. You've got all kinds of, there's popular artists all over the world. I don't think in the modern age you can say that British music is necessarily much better than anywhere else. Yeah, but the Rolling Stones are 70s and 80s. You know, I mean, what are they doing now? Apart from clambering onto stage with a Zimmer frame, which, you know, respect, okay? No way I'm going to be as fit and healthy as Mick Jagger by that age. Fair play to him. But you can't think of them as being a modern band. Just touring does not make you a musical band of the modern era. They are like 70s, 80s. And it's true, you know, the British music from the 70s and 80s is absolutely incredible. And I would say, yeah, for sure, some of the best music that's ever existed in the modern era, the last 200 years, came out of the UK in the 60s, 70s, 80s. Pink Floyd, the Beatles, Rolling Stones, The Cure. I mean, there's a lot of bands that like started musical movements, aren't there? Like the Beatles kind of, along with Elvis, sort of started this rock and roll thing. But then we had The Cure. They started the goth movement. Robert Smith is fascinating. The guy is so funny. He used to look totally normal. Like jeans, blonde hair, blue eyes, just look like a normal band. And then one day he turns up and he's got this crazy hair and he's wearing all black and he's got his fingernails painted black and stuff. And suddenly goth is born. I don't know if that's how it happened. I don't know enough about goth, but he's a funny guy. Very intelligent. A little bit, yeah. Not as much as I would like. You know, one of the things Sleepwalker is, I used to make music when I was drunk. And as you may know about me, I'm not as much of an alcoholic as I was in the past. So It was kind of something that went a bit hand in hand for me. I'm not saying necessarily that alcohol helps. It's not even that. It's just that I'm more motivated and inclined to actually sit down and do it. Whereas now I find it difficult to have the enthusiasm to do it. Oh, I prefer electric way more. But the thing is, acoustic's just so easy. You know, if you go and camp it, I could take my acoustic now and start plonking away. It's easy to do that. Electric's a pain because you need all the plugs and the electricity and the speakers and this and that. Acoustic's just super easy to play a little song, but I prefer electric for sure. So you have significantly more options. How's that for a comparative? Significantly more options with an electric. You can make it sound all these different ways. You can make it sound clean if you want, or you can make it sound all kinds, kind of funky or rocky or, you know, whatever. And I like those options. I like a bit of synth as well. I have a synthesizer just here. You could argue that music's been dead since the 70s. I think that's quite a strong claim, Vitelli. I mean, the 90s definitely had some real good music, and the 80s had some of the best music. 2000s, 2010s, 2020s. and the 2030s will be game over. But yeah, it's just funny because film's kind of similar, isn't it? Old films are so good, aren't they? Like, I think these days it's more about TV series because you do get some really good TV series now that are just so well written. But like, film has gone downhill so badly. I mean, you have a look at the films that we got in the 80s and a bit in the 90s, but mainly the 80s. The films in the 80s are amazing. They are so good. Like Back to the Future, Indiana Jones, Aliens, like just amazing films. And like, look at what they make today, and it's like, it's like you would rather not watch it. Like if someone shows it to you, you're like, how much can I pay you to turn that off? What happened? Why did they just don't know how to make films anymore? When's the last time you went to the cinema and saw a good film, and what was it? What's the best film you've seen in the cinema in the last 10 years? I think the last really good film I saw in the cinema was Inception by Christopher Nolan. And I saw that twice. Ah, Marvel. Yeah. It's not a great film. It was a cultural phenomenon, and the whole Thanos thing was nice, and Endgame and everything. It was a cultural phenomenon. But I don't know. Is in 20 years, will someone go back and watch Endgame and enjoy it in the same way? You know, it was just a fun superhero film, you know? But if you go and watch like Superman from the 80s, it's a great film. It's really good. And it has this kind of realness to it that the modern films don't have because they use so much computer generated stuff. And it's like every scene needs to have something that keeps your attention. But if you watch like the old films, they're not like that. It's more kind of real. Yeah, unfortunately, Vitaly, I don't know who that is. Ronnie Dio? Sorry, I'm lost. Is that an American country singer? I'm just totally guessing. By the way, folks, this is an English Q&A, in case you're kind of jumping in. Feel free to ask any questions you want. I'm just sticking around, seeing if anyone has any interesting things to come up with. Should we take a look at some news? How about that? What do you think? Is that a good idea? Oh, maybe that's not a good idea, actually. Do a little bit of reading comprehension. The news is all wild stuff, though. No. We're not talking about any of that. No. Yeah, I don't want to talk about any of that stuff, actually. Oh, okay, I found a good one. Batman and Robin, costumed police, make arrests. 2 Metropolitan Police officers have gone undercover in an unconventional fashion by dressing as Batman and Robin to tackle illegal gambling on Westminster Bridge. They don the unusual uniforms to target suspects familiar with usual patrols. Oh, yeah, that's what I'm talking about. This is what I want from my police. I want them to dress up like Batman and Robin. That's brilliant. Oh, brilliant. Fantastic. Oh, look at this. No, show it again. You actually get to see them make the arrest. You see Batman? You're under arrest. I'm Batman, and you're under arrest. That's great. Love it. Okay, well, it's good to see that we still have some decent police officers in the UK. Inspector Watson said he was thrilled to see the unusual crime-fighting tactic work to take these people off the street and protect tourists. He needs to do it in a Batman voice. We're going to take them off the street and protect the tourists. I'm Batman. This is great. He added, I remembered that I had Batman and Robin costumes, which could come in useful. What? Who thinks that as a police officer? Yeah, I remembered that I had a Batman and Robin costume, and I thought that'll come in useful for my police work. Well, there you go. Music is in decay, not dead. Well, music will never die, Sylvia. Only evolve. I mean, we can go through bad times with music, right? Good times and bad times. I mean, some people say the 50s was a bit, for example. Guess you guys aren't really interested in the Batman and Robin police in the UK, huh? Right. Well, I do think on that note, it's probably about time that we're going to wrap up. Thank you very much for joining me today. I do hope you're all having a lovely, lovely weekend wherever you are. And I hope that for the rest of the week, you have a lovely, lovely time. Smash that like button, hit subscribe. And I will join you again on... Ooh, will I join you again? What time? What's the date? Yes, I will. I will join you again next Saturday. And the Saturday after that. However, on the 3rd of May, we will likely have a break, just so you know. Once Upon a Time. Once Upon a Time. Well, I like anything with Johnny Depp. Once Upon a Time in Mexico was cool. I wasn't a massive fan of Once Upon a Time in Hollywood. That's all right. You know, this is Quentin Tarantino. He made Reservoir Dogs and Pulp Fiction. They're like some of the best films ever made. And it's like Once Upon a Time in Hollywood. It's okay. But it's not. It's not Pulp Fiction. It's not Reservoir Dogs. All right. Thank you very much, everybody. Have a lovely week, lovely weekend, and I'll see you next time. Bye bye.